Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the event. We have an amazing presentation coming up called Human in the Loop, Systems Future-Proofing Your AI Stack. Please give Justyn a warm virtual welcome. Justyn, welcome to the virtual stage.
Well, thanks, Daniel. Excited to be here. This is one of the most biggest topics that I'm deeply passionate about, especially in the human in the loop side. So I'm going to take it away and jump right in.
Great. I'll be here if you need me.
Sounds good. All right. So future-proofing your AI stack. That's where human in the loop is an area that I'm the most interested in. We spend a lot of time. I'm the VP of product over at Reflex Media. We are a technology and marketing agency. We have a number of global brands. We have customers in 150 countries. We tend to center around social dating and a lot of e-commerce, a lot of fulfillment, a lot of other big B2B services lines and brands. We have over 50 million users that come through our platforms every year. And most importantly for this topic, we have 2.5 million pieces of user-generated content that we handle every single day. So while there are certainly a lot bigger firms out there doing a lot more work, we've certainly had to struggle through the painful process of building our systems up to be globally scalable and to be able to handle all these different use cases. So some of the brands you may have seen that we manage are Seeking.com. It's been around for 15 years. It's a premier dating site. Another one that's interesting and it's kind of on the different side, but also a dating platform is FirstDate.com. So any of you all that are on the dating scene, definitely want to check those out. Those are some of the brands that we manage and run and are some of our flagship products. So why does human in the loop matter? So Eric Schmidt, you've probably heard of him, former CEO of Google, just released a book last week, and he's doing all the interview rounds right now. And he had a quote last week that was really, really interesting and I think timely for this particular conversation. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but the parts that really jumped out to me were AI is imprecise, which means that it can be an unreliable partner, but it's capable of learning. So we've all seen these systems in the news. We've seen whistleblowers. We've seen all kinds of negative information flowing around AI and how these systems are struggling right now, because this is still an industry in its infancy. We're still all learning how to operationalize these systems. And so my argument is that human in the loop is a critical way that we can continue to leverage these systems at scale, that we can build trust and transparency with all of our stakeholders, whether those are customers or regulatory agencies. And I think you'll find, and I hope that I can sell you on just how important human in the loop is for your system, especially if you're just starting down that journey. So the sheer size and scope of the programs that we manage personally over here at Reflex, but also what you're doing, just warrants the need for a degree of social responsibility. Anything that we're building that incorporates AI, human in the loop is a significant way that we can improve those systems and keep them operating at a way that's creating positive social outcomes. Especially in the case where you have user-generated content that's always changing. Now, I'm not just talking about social platforms or dating platforms like what we manage, but if you're in health tech, you're in fintech, there's all these industries where you have user-generated content that's coming into your system. That's always going to be changing. There's different input types. There's different language. We've got to have a means and a mechanism to constantly improve our systems. And also, you hear me talk a lot about fairness and equity. So we've seen the struggles that some of these big tech firms have had to deal with when it comes to fairness and equity. We have all kinds of problems that can emerge when a system is left to be on its own and just learning directly from the information that it's getting, as opposed to incorporating human in the loop into those systems. So, and you'll always hear me talk about how data is king. Yes, we have these amazing systems that do incredible work, but ultimately the data that we have in our systems that we own is really our competitive advantage. And human in the loop is a powerful way to constantly be improving upon the data that we have. And while we are going to see commoditization around AI as a service, we're going to see continued growth in different ways that you can just quickly bolt on AI into any given system. You'll hear me talk about later how important it is for us to be very considerate of whether or not AI as a service is the right move for our organization and for our customers. That's not to downplay the great work that isn't being done, but ultimately owning our own data and being able to use that with human in the loop to constantly improve upon it is going to be a key competitive advantage as we move forward. And coming back to fairness and equity, I really just want to emphasize how having human in the loop can reduce unfairness in any given system, can improve equity and the outcomes that we're looking for here. You can reduce drift as behavior changes, and you can even have your humans prioritize specific issues that may be emerging in the data as it's flowing through. So another key thing that I want to make sure you are armed with as you were talking about to your internal stakeholders about human in the loop and whether or not to make the case to bring these systems into your processes is we've found that human in the loop is a powerful way to give our stakeholders confidence in bringing new products to market where we have AI and ML plugged into the pipeline. Common examples that you might find where you have high confidence but low recall, high precision, low recall in a given system. We use human in the loop for a lot of POCs when we're just trying to bring something to market quickly. It gives us that ability to do it. And then, of course, we incorporate labeling coming from our humans right back into the systems to improve the models very quickly. I'm going to speak to specifically a way that you can do that here towards the end. Some of the use cases that we look for human in the loop is getting that near real-time feedback. So this is more of a monitoring or a logging exercise, making sure that a system is performing as it should, so that if something starts to change, there's some new meme that starts landing in our platforms, we can monitor and very quickly see from a human standpoint what might be changing. We also leverage human in the loop for data cleansing. So as you know, if you've built any systems from scratch, you've done your own training or transfer learning exercise, having quality data is critical. It's step zero. You can't really move forward if you don't have good data in your system. So having human in the loop can help you very quickly realize better quality data for training. And we also use human in the loop for auditing. So as I mentioned, we might have something with a high precision, low recall. Something that's above our normal precision thresholds, we would still have humans moderate a subset of that content just to make sure the system is performing as expected. So one of the things hopefully if you're getting excited about human in the loop, you may be thinking, well, what are the candidate systems that we might want to plug human in the loop into? So this is a framework that we use for making sure that we're thinking through the best time and best place to plug in human in the loop, because not all of our systems that include AI have human in the loop in every single space. So we're continuing to build that portfolio out to make sure we have it everywhere. So the first thing you got to be considering is, do you have access to the model for training? Yes, you can use AI as a service. Yes, you may have partners that allow for consuming some of your modeled responses, but it's even better if you have access to that model for training and transfer learning exercises. So that would be the first thing that I would look at. Is that something that we already own? The next step is, high risk or high impact opportunities. I think outside of social and dating and into health tech and fintech, again, there are areas where there are high risk and rapidly evolving situations that this might be a better use case for than something that has a low impact or low risk. So you could always start with dabbling in human in the loop with lower risk systems, but ultimately where you're going to get the best impact for your organization, your stakeholders, is where there is significant risk already. And lastly, I would look for humans. If you already have subject matter experts, whether that's a content moderation team or PhD experts who can readily already doing the work and know how to label data in a way that's constructive, and they're already doing that, where you can use human in the loop very quickly, and you treat AI more as an augmenting force within the team, not the replacement for that force. It's a very powerful way to make sure you're picking a system that can have the biggest impact. So I look for all three of these things, and as long as all three exist, it's usually a good candidate for some of your first rounds of experimentation with human in the loop. So let's talk about a real world example. I've talked about these big lofty concepts, but let's look at one use case that we leveraged specifically that was very powerful. I think it'd be a good place to start. This is a case where we have a gender of a photo, trying to find what the gender is in a given photo. So this is just a single classifier example. Most of our content for video and photos have dozens in some cases of classifiers, but let's just focus on one. And in this case, let's say the precision that the business has decided upon is 98%. They're willing to accept any labels in a production environment where precision is 98% or greater. But what you have to go back and tell your stakeholders is, well, that's cool, but recall is only going to be 15%. So this isn't going to be as exciting or have as big of an impact as you might think at that precision level. They understand, and that's great. So you want to then look at how can you increase recall while maintaining your precision. So here's a way that you could do that. And here's some of the ways that we have done it. First of all, we focused on predictions that were coming out that didn't meet the threshold that we had, but we were looking at human in the loop moderation as close to that prediction as it made sense. The reason being is we found that there was pooling happening around some of the predictions. So let's say we had a significant amount of the predictions coming back around the 94% precision. We want to shift that up and want to improve the system so that it's more confident and gets us that precision up to 98%. So we focused on that pooling, but you may not have pooling happening. So if in the absence of pooling, you got a fairly good even distribution from that precision threshold requirement, that's fine. You may need to expand those moderation bands out just so you get enough human moderation, relabeling of data that it's useful. We do watch for pooling around specific thresholds, even in the case where there have been transferred learning and retraining. It's just common that there's certain use cases where there tends to be some pooling. So look for those, as those are going to be some sources of low-hanging fruit that you can quickly get some benefits and do some of that transferred learning on the newly labeled data and keep going. This is another really important piece. Not all human moderators are equal. A big, powerful piece of what we've learned to do is that we do know that there are subject matter experts that tend to moderate and relabel content far more consistently at high quality. That was kind of a surprise for us because we thought our teams were pretty consistent, and we found that just wasn't true. So that was a good training exercise for our humans, but that's something else to be aware of. If you're finding a lot of noise in your retraining or you're finding a lot of confusion, then that may be a way that you can, again, quickly get a more quality set of relabeling into your system. Obviously, if you reduce your number of moderators that you're pulling data from, you're going to have less data, but you'll find that even just reducing the noise with fewer relabeled data points, you're still going to get a lot of improvements in your model very quickly. So that's an example of how we did this in the real world on a single classifier. But you'll find that there's a lot of use cases where if you're just nervous about human in the loop, this is a good way to just start off and get your feet wet and then start building that system for your own methods and processes that will continue to feed that relabeled data back in, and you can continue to improve. So I think I have a few extra minutes, so I wanted to touch on some bonus content. And I really want to start the conversation around human in the loop and how we see this evolving in our industry as we go. So I would love to talk about with others the implications for AI as a service, simply because if we own our data and we are required to feed that off to a third party, that reduces the competitive advantage, and it creates a system where we may be hesitant to do it. So while I love the commoditization of a lot of different classifiers and transformers and all these other systems that are out that make it easy to leverage AI, I'm not sure that that's the future. And we've got to be building systems that incorporate our own data, let us keep our competitive advantage while still creating transparency.
2 minutes left.
Thank you. I've got a broader industry need for human in the loop data standards. As we are learning to moderate content with humans in the loop, I do think there's some data standardization conversations that need to happen. How you're doing it, how I'm doing it, there's probably quite a bit of learning that we could share and improve these systems as we go. Last but not least, we really have to get ahead of regulatory requirements that are coming. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I think 2 years is about as long as we possibly have before we start seeing EU and other standards landing. The sooner we get ahead of this as industry practitioners and begin sculpting the narrative, informing regulatory agencies of how to best create these transparency standards to improve trust with these systems across our society, the better. So we need to start having conversations about how that looks and what kind of information can be shared publicly and transparently while retaining our competitive advantage. So thank you so much for having me. I hope this was interesting. Can't wait to keep these conversations going. Don't forget to check out my profile. I got some gifts that we might be giving away if you can figure out what my tattoos are about. So thanks for having me, and talk soon.
Thank you so much, Justyn. It was a pleasure having you as well. AI for attendees, go ahead and make your way to the next session and do some networking along the way. Thank you so much.